Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the sources you've shared with us, your notes, your research, your most pressing questions, and transform them into the ultimate shortcut for becoming instantly well-informed.
And today we are tackling something that's really fundamental for anyone learning English.
Yeah, it's that common struggle, right?
Yeah.
Moving beyond just being technically correct and into sounding
Yeah,
natural, authentic.
exactly. This deep dive is going to be intensely practical. We're looking at what the sources call survival English, but for real life,
Mm,
for the checkout lines, for cafes, for those really crucial workplace meetings.
right.
Our mission here isn't just to make your English functional. We want to help you make it sound genuinely pleasant, confident, and, professional.
And that friction point you mentioned is something I think so many of our listeners will recognize immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They've spent years, literally years, mastering grammar. They know the vocabulary, but then they step into a real conversation.
And it all feels a bit stiff.
It lands awkwardly, especially if it's a request or, heaven forbid, a slight disagreement. It can feel abrupt or sometimes, unintentionally rude.
And the go-to solution is often just to sprinkle the word please everywhere.
Right. Just add please at the end and hope for the best.
And it helps a little, but it doesn't quite fix the underlying problem.
Exactly.
And that is the core frustration we're going to be dismantling today.
Yeah.
You can have absolutely perfect grammar and still come across as robotic or even demanding.
So we're diving into the architecture of conversation.
We are. We're going to give you the specific structural templates that can transform your English from being merely accurate into something genuinely friendly and smooth.
And here's the essential aha moment, and this comes right from the top of the source material.
Mhm.
If you're struggling with sounding polite, the absolute first thing to shift your focus to is the structure of the sentence.
Yes,
Not just that one single word, please.
that's the central thesis. In English, conversational finesse, politeness, it's all embedded in the syntax. The structure itself dictates the social dynamic.
So a direct command, even if you tack on a please, still feels a bit off.
It often retains its demanding energy, yes. We have to master these really subtle shifts that turn what is basically an order into a courteous inquiry.
So we're moving past just memorizing vocabulary lists and getting into the real mechanics of conversation.
Exactly. We're going to analyze these structural changes across three key areas where this survival English is just essential.
Okay, what are they?
First, basic daily interactions. Then navigating those high-volume service environments like shops and cafes.
Well, that's a big one.
It is. And finally, achieving what you could call professional diplomacy in the workplace.
It sounds like a journey into linguistic strategy.
It is. And by the end of this deep dive, you are going to have specific phrases ready to deploy that will immediately upgrade your interactions and reduce that conversational friction.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this foundational concept first. The sources start with a very stark contrast.
They do. They pit the imperative structure against a natural request structure.
And the quintessential example they use is about getting a drink of water.
Yes, the classic, give me water.
Right. It's a bold command.
It's efficient, I'll give it that. But it's socially jarring. I mean, outside of some very specific contexts.
When you use an imperative like that, you're signaling an assumption, right? You're assuming immediate compliance.
You are. You're basically bypassing the whole social contract that requires you to acknowledge the other person's free will or their time. You're just demanding the action instantly.
And think about what that does to the listener.
Exactly. You put this cognitive load on them. When someone uses a direct command, the receiver really only has two choices: comply right away or reject the command.
There's no middle ground.
None at all. No space for negotiation, which puts this immediate and totally unnecessary pressure on them. In most everyday situations, that pressure just feels disrespectful.
But we should probably pause here, like you said, and be clear about context. Because imperatives aren't always wrong.
Oh, absolutely not. Context is everything. First, in an emergency, stop, help. Those are necessary imperatives.
Of course.
Second, in situations of, extreme intimacy with close family where the social distance is basically zero, a parent might tell their child, put your plate in the sink.
Sure, that's normal.
And third, in instructional settings where there's a clear hierarchy, a teacher says, turn to page 45. But in a cafe or a meeting or when you're speaking to a professional tier.
Using an imperative is conversational dynamite.
It really is.
Okay, so if the imperative is off the table, what are the natural requests? The sources point towards structures like, could I get some water? Or Can I have a bottle of water, please?
Notice the radical transformation here. These are no longer commands.
No, they're questions.
They're questions or requests structured as possibilities. This is the power of modal verbs and conditionals in English conversational architecture.
Okay, I want to probe this a bit because learners are told to use could or can, but often not why. What is it about those specific little words that completely changes the social temperature?
It's because the introduction of a modal verb like could, can, would, or might. It transforms the statement. It's no longer an assertion of your will. It becomes a query about feasibility or possibility.
A query about feasibility.
Yes. When you ask, could I get some water? You're introducing a hypothesis. You're asking, is this transaction possible?
And by asking if it's possible, you're inherently acknowledging that it might not be. You're acknowledging the potential for rejection, even if it's super unlikely.
You've hit the nail on the head.
You're voluntarily ceding a tiny bit of control back to the other person.
That act of ceding control is the definition of structural politeness in English. You're showing respect for the other person's autonomy. The request is now phrased as an inquiry, which makes it fundamentally easier for them to process and accept because they feel respected. They're not being ordered around. You're moving from certainty this will happen to a hypothesis, could this happen?
That's a huge shift in mindset. It really isn't about adding a nice word. It's about changing the entire grammatical foundation of your intent.
It's the absolute cornerstone of conversational finesse in English. We are softening the certainty of our desire, and the greater the modal verb.
What do you mean by greater?
Moving along the scale.
Yeah.
From can, which is about ability or permission, to could, which is the more polite possibility, to would, which has the strong conditionality, the greater the deference you're offering.
That makes sense. Let's apply this to another crucial daily need, asking for assistance. As the sources note, native speakers almost never use the blunt request, help me. Learners often default to this because, grammatically it's correct.
It is correct and it's efficient, but outside of a true emergency, it just sounds like this generalized cry for aid. It doesn't have any specification.
So to sound natural, we need to use softening techniques that provide context.
And just as importantly, show respect for the potential helper.
The sources outline 3 really excellent structures for this, and each one has a slightly different social function. First, the straightforward, polite request. Could you help me with this?
This uses our reliable friend, the modal verb could, and it's nice and concise. It specifies the task with this, and it maintains a polite distance. It frames the assistance as a favor being requested.
Which, again, acknowledges that the helper has the option to say no or to defer. You're respecting their autonomy.
Always.
Okay, the second technique. I think this one is a stroke of conversational genius because it immediately validates the person you're asking.
Yes. Do you know how to?
Yes.
This structure is so strategic and highly respectful by asking, do you know how to? Oh, you are implicitly complimenting the person's expertise before you even make the actual request.
You're validating their knowledge first.
You're shifting the focus from the burden of the task to the value of their skill set.
So instead of, help me fix the spreadsheet, which just sounds like a demand for labor,
Right.
you could say, do you know how to troubleshoot this pivot table configuration?
Exactly. The person you're asking instantly understands that you are requesting access to their specialized genius, not just asking them to do grunt work for you.
And that change in implication from burden to expertise is an immensely powerful social lubricant. It makes them far more willing, maybe even enthusiastic, to help you.
You're building conversational capital.
And the third structure, which addresses the time and position right up front, is, would you mind showing me?
This one introduces the most conditional element, would, and the phrase mind. It's hyper-polite.
Why hyper-polite?
Because you are overtly acknowledging that your request is an imposition on their time or their comfort. You are asking them to consider their emotional willingness to help.
You're basically saying, I know this is a pain, but...
Precisely. It's the ultimate show of courtesy, demonstrating that you value their willingness just as much as their ability.
So if we connect all this back to the bigger picture, these structural choices, moving from the direct command to the softened conditional, they fundamentally alter how you're perceived.
They do. You're setting the stage for smooth, collaborative, daily interactions, which is really the essence of effective survival English. It stops being about what you know grammatically and starts being about how strategically you frame what you want to say.
Okay, let's take these insights and apply them to the busy, often hurried world of the service economy. Supermarkets, retail shops, cafes.
Yes, this is where learners often resort to direct, efficient language because they feel pressured, and that can really backfire by making them sound demanding.
So the sources highlight a really crucial natural structure for starting a search in a shop. It's not just stating the item's name, like milk, or asking, where is milk?
No, the standard is, I'm looking for.
So why is that phrase so critical for sounding natural? What's the grammatical engine running this?
It's the power of the present continuous tense, the progressive aspect.
I am looking.
Right. It implies an ongoing action, the process of searching. The phrasing signals patience, engagement. If you just say milk or where is the milk, you sound impatient, like you're demanding immediate information retrieval.
But by using I'm looking for,
Yeah,
you're signaling to the employee that you're already invested in this search and you're now inviting them to join your quest.
it's collaborative. You're buying social time. If you walk up to a store employee and say, where is the toilet paper? It sounds, I don't know, a little abrupt.
Yeah.
But if you say, excuse me, I'm looking for the toilet paper aisle, it frames the whole query as part of a process that you can work on together.
Right, the collaborative structure again. It also just gives immediate context to the employee, which makes their job easier.
Absolutely. They know you need location assistance, not just confirmation that they sell toilet paper. It buys you that conversational capital we talked about.
Okay, what about checking stock? Another frequent retail interaction. If something's out of stock, what's the recommended phrasing?
The sources say, when will you have more?
And why that specifically?
This phrasing is structurally engineered to be proactive and non-confrontational. By using the future tense, will you have, you're making an assumption that the item will return.
So it focuses the conversation on logistics and future business.
Right. It's not dwelling on the current deficiency. This avoids that potentially accusatory tone of, why don't you have this item in stock, which immediately forces the employee onto the defensive.
And when you're checking for variations like a different size or color,
The structures are, does this come in medium, or do you have this in blue?
there's a subtle difference there, isn't there?
There is. It's a subtle but important structural distinction. Does this come in? Is typically used for the inherent variations of the item itself, the standard options from the factory, sizes, colors, different materials.
You're asking about the product line.
Exactly. Do you have this in is a slightly broader inquiry about their physical inventory right now, what's in the stock room. But both are excellent survival structures because they're efficient and they specify exactly what you want clearly.
And then there's closing an interaction gracefully, especially when an employee comes up to you and asks if you need help.
Ah, yes. The simple, effective phrase, just browsing, thanks.
And the thanks is the key part.
The word thanks here is non-negotiable. If you omit it, just browsing can sound a bit dismissive or cold.
Yeah, a little short.
Adding thanks preemptively acknowledges their effort, and it fulfills that social obligation of courtesy. It effectively serves as a polite stop sign that closes the interaction without any awkwardness. It just maintains the conversational finesse.
Let's move to food service. This is a high-volume area where people need to be fast, but structural politeness is still so important. So we contrast the blunt, I want coffee.
Right. That phrasing, I want, is just an assertion of desire. It's not a polite request. It's way too direct.
So we need the alternatives. We've already covered the polite request structure. Could I get a latte? The modal verb softens the demand.
Yes, that's a great one. But the sources noted a second, equally common, and maybe even more natural structure for ordering, especially when it's busy.
Which is,
I'll have a cappuccino.
okay, this is where I think a lot of learners might get confused because they're using the future tense, I will have. It sounds like a prediction.
This is a perfect example of how conversational finesse can override strict grammatical theory. While I will have is technically future tense, in the context of ordering in a cafe, you're not predicting the future.
What are you doing?
You're signaling decisiveness and commitment to the transaction. It's an announcement of your choice, which is perceived as standard, efficient, and polite in this environment.
So the structural expectation of the place, of the environment, is what makes that particular structure polite.
Exactly. You're telling the person what you've decided, rather than demanding they serve you. It signals competence and speed, which, in a busy context, is a form of respect for the server's time.
That's a great insight. Now let's talk about the high-stakes situation,
Okay.
handling mistakes. Your order is wrong. How do you fix it without sounding aggressive?
The key is de-escalation. The recommended structure is, sorry, I think there's a mistake.
Let's break that down, starting with, sorry. You're not actually sorry, are you?
Not in the sense of apologizing for a fault, no. It's purely functional. You're using it to signal that you're about to introduce a conversational interruption or slightly awkward topic.
It's an attention getter.
An attention getter that preemptively softens the communication. It's like saying, "Excuse me."
And then the critical part, I think there's a mistake.
This phrasing is essential for maintaining social diplomacy. You are focusing the entire interaction on the error or the situation, not the person who made the error.
And the I think part is crucial.
It is. By using "I think," you introduce a subjective element. You're suggesting a little bit of doubt, even if you are 100% certain the order is wrong. This is all about conflict aversion. We avoid making the other person lose face.
You're giving them a diplomatic way out, an option to say, oh, you're right, my apologies, without having to explicitly admit, I messed up your order.
It shifts the interaction from an accusation to collaborative problem solving. This is the difference between saying, "This coffee is wrong and you made it," and saying, "I think this coffee might not be what I ordered." The second one invites the server to help you fix the issue graciously.
Let's maybe expand on this a bit, because there are a few other common service interactions. What about asking for the check or the bill?
Oh, that's a great one. Many learners might translate directly and just say, "Bill, please," which is, again, very direct.
So what's the more natural structure?
You use the modals we talked about. "Could we get the check, please?" Or, a bit more informal, "Can I grab the bill?"
Grab the bill. I like that.
Grab implies you're facilitating the action, making it seem like a small, efficient thing. But the most formal, and sometimes necessary, is something like, "Excuse me, whenever you have a moment, could we settle up?"
Oh, adding that time to fro clause whenever you have a moment is maximum politeness.
It is. You're respecting their current busyness. It's pure conversational finesse.
What about something a bit more sensitive, like inquiring about allergies?
This is where clarity has to meet structural empathy. A learner might just ask, "Does this contain nuts?" Which is okay, but it can be improved.
How?
We use softening language and we frame the context. So instead of that bare question, you start with a qualifier. "I apologize, I have an allergy. Does the chicken dish contain peanuts?"
So you provide the why up front.
Exactly. Or you could use a conditional structure. "Would it be possible to confirm if this dish has any dairy?" Framing it with that personal context immediately explains why you're asking, which makes it less demanding.
It turns it from a demand for information into an explanation of a necessary health consideration. That's a huge social difference.
It is. And one last one, making a reservation. You can't just say, "I want a table for 4 tonight."
No. So how do we structure that professionally?
You use an introductory phrase like, "I'd like to book." Or, and this one is really good, "I was hoping to reserve."
Okay, I'd like to book uses the conditional would like, which is the polite form of want.
Yes. But look at "I was hoping to reserve." This uses the past continuous. It's an extremely powerful softening technique.
Why does putting it in the past help?
You're describing a past state of hope, which makes the request sound less insistent in the present moment. It makes the request feel open to rejection without causing offense. "I was hoping to reserve a table for 4 for Saturday evening. Do you have any availability?" It is just structurally excellent for deferential requests.
Wow. Okay, so we're structuring our requests in the past tense to soften their impact in the present. That is truly advanced survival English.
Now let's elevate these same structural insights to the professional sphere.
Okay, the workplace.
In the workplace, natural English is basically synonymous with diplomatic English. We aren't just trying to avoid offending a server anymore. We're trying to manage relationships, build consensus, and maintain collaboration, for the long term.
And directness, which sometimes people think is a good thing, can very quickly be mistaken for arrogance or inflexibility in a professional environment.
Absolutely. If your idea sounds like a directive rather than a suggestion, you just shut down the critical discussion before it even starts.
So the ability to soften opinions and introduce ideas gently is probably the most crucial survival skill here.
It is. We need structures that present our suggestions as collaborative options, not as mandates.
The sources gave 2 excellent templates for this. The first one was, I think we could try.
Let's look closely at the mechanics of that one. "I think" immediately qualifies the statement. It's your subjective opinion, not a universal truth.
Right.
But the real structural heavy lifting, again, comes from our modal verb could.
We saw could soften a request for water, but here it's softening an entire idea.
Exactly. It frames the suggestion as a hypothetical option. It's one possibility for the team to explore, rather than a definitive, certain path. This structural choice reduces the risk for you as the speaker.
How so?
It signals that you are open to feedback and that your idea is up for collective revision. You're not tying your ego to it.
You're planting a seed, not issuing a blueprint.
That's a perfect analogy. Now consider the second template. Maybe we should consider...
Here we have the softening adverb, maybe.
And maybe explicitly introduces uncertainty and openness. It says, hey, this is just one potential path among many.
Right.
And then pairing maybe with should consider frames the whole conversation around evaluation. Should implies a mild recommendation, and consider explicitly asks the group to evaluate the idea rather than just execute it immediately.
So that dramatically reduces the chance of you sounding overly certain or authoritative.
And it makes your colleagues far more receptive, even if they end up disagreeing with the substance of your idea. The structural gentleness earns you a fair hearing.
And this must apply equally to emails, right? You would never email a colleague, change the deadline to Friday.
Oh, heavens no. That's a transactional command.
So what would the natural professional phrasing be?
You'd use those structural buffers, something like, I think we could potentially shift the deadline to Friday if that works for your team.
Okay, so you have I think, potentially, and then that conditional closing, if that works for your team. It's all about making it collaborative.
Always.
Which brings us to what might be the highest level of professional difficulty. Polite disagreement.
Yes.
The sources give us a very strict, very crucial rule for this. Never, ever jump straight to no.
Direct rejection is a collaboration killer. It just forces the other person into a defensive stance, and that makes any further constructive conversation almost impossible.
So the professional natural English approach uses a strategic two-part structure for pushing back.
A structure that prioritizes respect. It's sometimes called the validation sandwich.
Okay, let's dissect part one. The expression of hesitation. The suggested phrase is, I'm not sure that will work.
This is structural brilliance. It gently signals concern without being an outright personal rejection of the other person's idea.
It frames the issue as one of feasibility. Is this plan workable? Rather than judgment, is your idea good or bad?
Exactly. And by saying, I'm not sure, you leave room for nuance. You suggest that maybe with a small modification, the idea could still succeed. That little invitation to refine the idea is crucial.
It's non-confrontational hesitation. You're questioning the outcome, not the intent.
Precisely. And that leads directly into part two, which is absolutely mandatory. Acknowledgement followed by an alternative.
And the phrase for that is, I see your point, but I have another idea.
I want to spend a moment on that opening clause. I see your point. This phrase is doing so much heavy lifting.
Why is it so important?
It's the validation step, and it is non-negotiable in diplomatic communication. Before you introduce your counter-argument, your but, you must validate your colleague's perspective.
So saying, I see your point, or that's a valid approach, shows you've listened.
You've listened, you've processed, and you've respected their input. You've acknowledged their contribution to the collective process.
And you've just built up a little bit of social goodwill, so when you introduce the but, it doesn't sound like an attack.
Precisely. The but is now just a structural transition, not a negation. You haven't rejected them, you've accepted their input, and are now just gently pivoting the discussion.
And introducing your idea as another idea instead of a better idea keeps it collaborative.
Yes, it's an alternative, not a replacement.
I can really see how applying this structure, hesitate, validate, then offer an alternative, would immediately elevate your professional standing. It shows high emotional intelligence.
It's the difference between being understood and being respected. And this framework is essential in global business, where direct confrontation can be culturally very challenging.
Let's tackle another professional pitfall, the polite follow-up or reminder email. A learner might be tempted to just say, you still haven't sent the report.
Which is very accusatory.
So how do we structure that politely?
Again, we use structural cushioning and what you could call temporal deflection. We avoid direct confrontation about their failure to act. Instead of focusing on their inaction, you focus on your need for the information.
Can you give us the template?
You start with a soft opener. I wanted to check in quickly about the report, then use conditional phrasing. Would you be able to send that over by the end of the day? Or even softer. I was hoping to receive the report this afternoon. Is that still feasible? That I was hoping structure describing a past expectation is highly deferential, just like we saw with the restaurant reservation.
That subtly communicates urgency without sounding aggressive. You're asking about feasibility, not demanding action.
Exactly.
Okay, we have covered so much ground. From ordering coffee in the past, continuous, to managing conflict with conditionals. Let's try to synthesize all of this.
Let's look at one more incredibly common, simple yet functional phrase that is pure social lubricant. Take your time.
Take your time. It's interesting because grammatically, it's an imperative. It's a command.
It is, but its social function is one of complete generosity and courtesy. It grants permission, it releases pressure, and it signals that you prioritize the other person's comfort and accuracy over your own immediate needs.
It's the polar opposite of the aggressive imperative, hurry up.
It demonstrates patience and psychological generosity, which is a key element of natural communication. In daily life, saying take your time to a colleague who is trying to formulate a complex thought, or to a customer service rep who's dealing with a tricky issue, it's a small structural gift.
It removes the pressure.
It removes the pressure and almost guarantees a smoother outcome because the person feels less stressed.
So when we look at the collective impact of all these shifts, from demanding to inquiring, from sharp disagreement to diplomatic refinement, the overall benefit that the sources really emphasize is this enormous confidence payoff.
This is the positive feedback loop we want every listener to understand. When your English starts to sound more natural because you're consciously deploying these appropriate structures, two things happen right away.
Okay.
First, people react more positively to you. They're more accommodating, interactions are just smoother.
And second, that external positive reaction feeds directly back into your own psychological state.
Exactly. You sound more competent and confident, and therefore you feel more confident, which makes your next interaction even smoother and more effective.
The friction just disappears.
It does. And learners often mistakenly believe that being highly polite makes them sound weak or tentative.
Right.
But the structural politeness we've discussed, using modals, using softening adverbs, validating opposing points, it actually demonstrates strategic communication awareness and high conversational competence. It's a sign of sophistication and professional strength.
It really sounds like we're not just teaching language, we're teaching social strategy that's wrapped in language.
That is exactly what survival English is at this level. You're moving from language translation to social code translation.
So for the learner listening right now, what is the immediate actionable takeaway? How do they make this shift from knowing the rule to making the structure automatic?
You have to integrate it into your muscle memory. The source material makes a very strong, specific recommendation. Commit to using at least 2 polite request structures and 2 of the professional diplomacy expressions in real life this week. It takes conscious effort at first.
For instance, when you walk into the cafe tomorrow, deliberately pause and choose to say, I'll have a latte, instead of, I want a latte.
Yes. Or when a colleague brings up an idea you're a little wary of, pause and try. I'm not sure that will work, but I have another idea.
That initial commitment will feel slow, maybe even awkward.
It will, but the positive external reactions you receive will reinforce the behavior. And soon, those structural templates, the 2-part disagreement framework, they'll become automatic parts of your vocabulary toolkit.
It's about slowing down just enough to select the right diplomatic structure and trusting that the efficiency you gain from the positive social outcome will far outweigh the split second you lost in the selection process.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's wrap up with the final takeaways.
To quickly summarize the architectural shifts we've covered, we moved away from the blunt imperative by adopting the language of possibility and deference through modals like could and can.
Right.
We mastered the art of inquiry in the service sector, focusing on collaborative structures like, I'm looking for, and diplomatic corrections like, I think there's a mistake.
And in the workplace.
And most importantly, we learned to deploy professional diplomacy by softening our opinions with, I think and maybe, and mastering that essential 2-step structure for respectful disagreement.
These really are small changes, but their impact is monumental. They are the keys to sounding truly natural, confident, and professional.
And your homework, if you choose to accept it, is to put these structural templates into action this week. Try the 2 polite request structures, the 2 workplace expressions, and just listen. Actively listen to how native speakers phrase their requests and disagreements.
And you'll hear these patterns we discussed.
You'll find them repeated constantly, which proves that these really are the true foundations of conversational finesse.
This has been a deep dive into the very architecture of courtesy and competence in English. It really shows that effective communication isn't about merely assembling words. It's about the framework, the structure you put those words into.
And this raises an important final question for you, the learner, to carry forward. We discussed how simple phrases like, take your time are hiding these complex social functions. So start analyzing the everyday language you hear. What other simple, seemingly functional English phrases are hiding sophisticated structural functions that grant permission, or defer an imposition, or save face?
The more you listen for the structures, and not just the dictionary meaning of the words,
The deeper your understanding of the social code will become.
that is the perfect final challenge. Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive into sounding natural. We'll catch you next time.